Ravens flock. The flock rundown is the place to be. My man Ryan has been a lifelong Ravens fan since he was born. So I'm telling you now, it's about to go down. The podcast, the flock rundown. Ravens, baby. Nothing gets better than waking up and wondering how high we can fly. Tune in.
Motionless brainwaves attempt to swim their way to sense, can't tame the untamed.
Appreciate you, Ray. What's up, Ravens fans? My name is Ryan, and welcome back to another episode of the Flock Rundown. So John Harbaugh just finished up a press conference at the owners' meetings where he answered some key questions about bringing back Van Noy and Clowney and David Ojabo and what happened to Odell and the outlook of the receiver room and the offensive line and a lot more. So I'm just going to go over some key things that he talked about, and then I'll just give my thoughts as usual, and we'll just chop it up and talk some Ravens football. So John Harbaugh said that he's optimistic that Van Noy and or Clowney do come back and re-sign with Baltimore this year. They obviously had incredible production, incredible value signing last year. I don't think they'll be quite as cheap, especially not Clowney, but I would love to re-sign them, and obviously so would Harbaugh. He said he's been texting with them. I'll just play the clip from the owners' meeting, and you guys can listen to what he says.
There is about JD and also about Kyle. There's optimism with both. I've been texting with JD and Kyle, here and there over the last weeks, and so I'm hopeful we get one or both of them back.
Now, we know Clowney visited with Carolina Panthers and the New York Jets, but has not reached a deal. They said the Jets have been aggressive, so they're trying to get him, but the fact that he hasn't signed is obviously good news for the Ravens. Kyle Van Noy did a little Q&A on X and said that he has spoken to Eric DaCosta about a contract extension, so there's definitely talks still ongoing. These are veteran players, and they usually don't sign immediately as soon as free agency opens. Some don't sign until after training camp, so this could just drag on for a long time. I feel like Clowney will probably sign, and it's looking more and more like that's back with Baltimore, and I couldn't be happier about that. I think for the price and for that production, for his athleticism, his size, his ability to disrupt the run game, set the edge, and we saw that production in a Ravens uniform in this same style defense last year. I know Mike McDonald was calling the defense, but the defense is not going to change a lot. The play calling may change. I don't know what Zach Orr brings to the table, but he's from that same system. He's from the same tree. So that defense is not going to change a whole lot. So I'm feeling better and better as the days go that Jadeveon Clowney will be back in a Ravens uniform. Kyle Van Noy as well. I think Van Noy could sit on the free agent market for quite a bit longer, but we'll see. Harbaugh also talked about David Ojabo and said that he expects a breakout year this year.
David's I think he's going to break out. I think he and Adafe are, going to be partners in crime. I think those guys are going to play great together. They're ready to roll, man. I mean, every time I talk to them, every time I see them, they're brimming with enthusiasm. They're working hard. He's healthy. They're both healthy. Can't wait to get to work with those guys.
Now, I'm going to hold my breath on that because I fell for the hype train last offseason during training camp, and everyone was just like, oh my goodness, David Ojabo's unstoppable. This guy is going to be great. And then the preseason came along. He wasn't really flashing, but I was like, whatever. He's young. He hasn't really had a lot of game experience because the small sample size of game experience that we have seen, his rookie year when he came back, he got a sack Burrow his first game, I think. So, I mean, he has flashed here and there, but he hasn't there's just no sample size there to even fairly judge it. And then early last season, which was supposed to be his breakout season or his welcome to the party, welcome to the NFL season, he gets hurt and is out for the year. So we just haven't seen a lot. So I got to hold my breath. A guy coming off 2 major injuries is not someone that I can just assume is going to be a dominant player right away and have a breakout year. Now, would I love that? Absolutely. I've been high on David Ojabo since college. And this guy should have been a first-round pick, but he unfortunately tore his Achilles and moved to the second round. The Ravens took him. I thought it was an incredible pick, but we'll see. That's TBD. You know what I mean? I don't know yet. I got to watch. I'm not falling for the hype train until I see some production throughout this season. But I still do believe in David Ojabo. I just don't want to overhype it, oversell it, And Harbaugh kind of did by saying he expects a breakout year from Ojabo, and he's right there. He's seeing it day in, day out, so maybe he has a better pulse on it. He also said he expects huge things from Owe, and it's going to be the Ojabo, Owe, outside linebacker pairing like we thought last year was going to be. So I don't know. It feels very repetitive from last year, but I know that those guys do have the potential to have high-level production, and then I think it's a perfect pairing if you're throwing back a Jadeveon Clowney and or a Kyle Van Noy with those guys. Maybe a little less playing time for the Van Noys and stuff, and then a little bit more playing time for Ojabo and Owe. And I think that that's another perfect marriage, and that's how I hope that this outside linebacker room pans out. You know, John Harbaugh was asked about the receiver room. Every year we talk about the receiver room for good reason, actually. I mean, I'm always concerned about the receiver room as well. Little less concerned now that we have Zay, but I've been concerned about the receiver room just like you guys year after year. But this is what he had to say on the receivers this year.
You know, we drafted 2 great players in the last 3 years in the first round, you know, and I would think that Rashod and Zay would be excited, you know, to kind of step to the front together. You know, that's where it kind of begins. And then, you know, we get a veteran player back in Nelly, who did such a great job last year, and kind of, he was a former first-round pick, you know, and he played at a high level, and he's a real versatile player. And then, you know, after that, we got Tylen. You know, I think Tylen gets a chance. He's going to do well. We got Sean Ryan in there as a young guy, so you never know how those young guys are going to keep developing. But we think all of our young guys are really talented guys, and we got the draft. So I think we're going to be in great shape at wide receiver. Like, I'm really excited. To me, it's, you know, and losing Odell, obviously, you know, I love Odell, but give those young guys a chance to see how they do.
So he's painting the picture that it's Zay Flowers and Rashod Bateman 1 and 2. Obviously, that could change if the right receiver falls in the first round. I feel like the Ravens would jump on it just because the future of Rashod Bateman is very unclear. I'll touch on that in a second, but I think that if the right receiver falls, you know, an Adonai Mitchell or somebody that is just a steal at 30, then the Ravens will take it, and then we'll kind of be stacked, and we'll have a future with that receiver and Zay Flowers. I think that's a really nice position to be in, but it's just all about best player available and who's there. I don't want to reach for a receiver at 30 if they really shouldn't go at 30. And if we don't take a receiver in the first round, then it's most likely going to be what John Harbaugh is saying. It's going to be Zay Flowers and Rashod Bateman. Maybe they sign that veteran like a Josh Reynolds or a Gallup, and then they still have Nelson Aguilar. He mentioned Tylan Wallace and some younger guys if they break out. I think Wallace is solid depth, but we've probably seen enough now that he's not going to be an elite receiver by any means. So I'm not holding out hope for him to break out. We know what we have in Nelson Aguilar, and I think he's a great wide receiver 3 or 4. I think that's a perfect wide receiver 3 or 4. I loved what he brought to the team last year. But if we do go this route, especially if we don't end up signing another wide receiver, then there's a lot of pressure on not only Zay Flowers, who I think is going to step up. We saw a lot of him balling last year. I really think he's built for it. But there's a lot of pressure on Rashod Bateman because this guy was a first-round pick and hasn't really been able to be on the field. And then last year when he was finally on the field, he wasn't involved very much. Now, if you watch the tape, you know that he has the ability, he has the talent, the route running, the separation. You know, he has a good feel for the game. He has enough skills to be a great receiver. He does. But we haven't seen it. You know what I mean? And I think it goes back to the Ojabo conversation a little bit. Rashod's even had more time than that. But I'm just saying it's scary because if you haven't seen it yet at all, it's hard to believe in it. But I do believe in his ability to do it. I just need to see it on the field. And then he also has to stay healthy. I know last year he did stay healthy, but the rest of his career he hasn't been, his NFL career at least. So there are some concerns. I believe in Rashod. I think that he can get the job done and be a huge part of this offense as a wide receiver too, but it's risky. It's very risky to go into the year being like, okay, it's Zay and Rashod and Nelson Aguilar. Because if anything goes wrong, if anyone's hurt, we have a problem. So the draft will be super telling, especially that those early rounds. You know, I don't think if we draft a receiver 3rd round or later, they're probably not going to be taking Rashod's spot at wide receiver 2 most likely. But if we draft a receiver in the 1st round especially, or even potentially the 2nd round, Rashod could have some competition, and then his future's unclear. We have to make a decision on his 5th-year option by May 2nd of this year. So that's coming up pretty quickly after the draft. Eric DeCosta has to decide, are we picking up Rashod Bateman's 5th-year option? Now, it would seem pretty obvious that you wouldn't, but if you look at the numbers of that 5th-year option, it's not breaking the bank compared to the wide receiver market. So I think that might be the selling point of it. But most likely, I would say they don't pick the option up, especially because it's before the season. Now, if it was after the year and he balls out this year, then obviously they'd pick it up. But I think it's a risky decision to pick that up before the season starts. But also, I understand if they do, because financially, it's not a huge commitment. I think it's $14-15 million when Calvin Ridley's making $24 million a year, and the wide receivers are getting crazy money. So having Rashod 1 year, $14 million, it is risky, but it's not an insane contract compared to what other wide receivers are getting in the market. So we'll see how this receiver situation shakes out. It's super interesting. The offensive line situation is also very interesting. Harbaugh spoke about the Morgan Moses trade, saying that was a really tough move for the team, but they're kind of tight against the cap and had to make that move to clear his complete salary. And they trust that they have Falele behind Morgan Moses to come in and step into that right tackle spot. I don't trust that move quite as much. I do love Falele. I love his size especially. I think that he could be a mauler, and he's still young, so he can improve greatly. I don't want to write him off by any means, but I was super high on him after his rookie year, and then last year I feel like I just lost a little confidence. And like I said, that does not mean that he can't step in, win the right tackle job, and dominate at right tackle. He has the ability and the potential to do that at some point. But I truly believe the Ravens are going to bring in some more competition at right tackle, some real competition. And Falele is going to have to really earn that job, as he should. I don't think it should be any other way. I just don't think that it's, we traded Morgan Moses because we have Falele and that's the right tackle job for him now. It's I bet you they draft a high pick. They make another free agency signing. They make a trade. They're bringing in some more competition, and I'm for it. I don't think it should be any other way. John Harbaugh did reiterate that he thinks the offensive line is going to be better than it was last year, and that makes me feel good. It has to be. Not that the offensive line was bad, but it was inconsistent. Obviously, the struggles of Ronnie Stanley being in and out of the lineup had a lot to do with that. He's healthy now. Let's pray he stays healthy. But if this offensive line can take a step up and be better than it was last year, be a little bit more athletic, I think that not only is our running game going to benefit, because we also got Derrick Henry, but giving Lamar time. When Lamar has time back there, he makes incredible decisions. He's accurate, he's decisive, and we succeed. You can go back to a lot of those blowout games against the Detroit Lions, against the Seattle Seahawks, against the Miami Dolphins. Lamar's back there chilling a lot of the game. So this offensive line is very important. It's probably the most important thing, and I know the team knows that, but I'm excited to see how that situation plays out as well. Let me know what you guys think about all this. I know we covered quite a bit, but do you want to see Clowney and Van Noy or one or the other back? Would you like to go in a different way? Do you want to give Ojabo and Owe more of an opportunity to step in and shine and prove themselves? And how do you want the wide receiver situation to play out? Do you trust Rashod Bateman? There's a lot of moves still to be made to finalize this roster, and I'm just excited to see how it plays out. I can't wait for the draft. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of the Flock Rundown. I appreciate you guys as always. Have a beautiful rest of your day, and I'll talk to you guys next time.
Motionless brainwaves attempt to swim there where the sense can't tame the untamed.